This to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, welcome to the 28-3 podcast. We are here recapping the Saints Monday night loss to the Chiefs. We have a lot of thoughts on this one. A lot happened during the game, and way too much to talk about in this one probably, but we're going to get to as much as we can. Nick, why don't you fire us off and get us going here?
Yeah, I think it's tough to take a whole lot of positives out of this one. I think we all were pretty much on the same page about the way we thought the game would go. I thought the Chiefs would pull it out, and I think you both thought, the Saints would pull it out.
Don't lump me with him.
Yeah,
I was with you, buddy. I picked the Chiefs.
I was the one that predicted it.
Oh, I thought you picked the Saints. My bad. I thought you picked the Saints by field goal. Okay, so Max and I, but I think we all thought the game would kind of play out the same way. And for a little while, it kind of did. It was an ugly game. We get it to 16-13 there right around the fourth quarter. But we were getting throttled. I don't think there's any debate about that. This was not a back and forth, slugfest. This was a missed field goal and a 1-yard line interception away from being a blowout. And, I think at one point I had texted you guys that it was 30-13 on the time of possession. We were getting run off the field. We held it close again, which is, commendable, I guess, when you're getting beat up that bad and you're still keeping the score within reach where, we actually gave ourselves a chance to do something in the fourth quarter. I think the most surprising thing to me was how badly the defense fared and that we allowed Kelsey. I think I brought it up that their only path to really ball control in this game was going to be Kelsey. And we had no answer for Kelsey. That was surprising to me that we allowed him to catch, I think it was 7 in the first half and what he end up with, 8 or 9. But to allow him to kind of control the pace of that game when that's their only real threat in the pass game, even though they passed it well all game with some of the other guys, it was him who was really moving the chains. And if you add in the play where he pitched it on the long third down, that doesn't count towards his yardage, but that was Kelsey making that play. That was a little bit surprising. Was I surprised Chris Jones was wrecking the interior of our line? Not at all. I think we all had to expect that. I was very disappointed that, and this is I'm going to have Corey kind of comment on this because we talked a little bit about it last year with Carmichael, Corey and I had a big debate over what do you do when you don't have the players? Do you get more creative or do you hunker down? Well, Clint hunkered down. I think it was 4 play actions. There was nothing interesting. There was nothing unique. It was a very bland game plan without the interior of the line. Was it another off game or was it, he just decided we're not going to take a lot of risk? I don't know. I don't know why we didn't see as much motion and play action as we saw in the first few weeks. Maybe the personnel had something to do with that. And, I'm interested to see what Corey thinks about that because that was pretty disappointing. I saw no game plan to get around knowing that your interior line was going to get dominated because there was no debate it was going to get dominated.
Yeah, I've got my thoughts, but
So for the defensive side, very disappointing. Offensive side, very disappointing. I think I give Carr a little more grace than you guys probably, but we all know and all agree that if you put pressure in his face, there's going to be mistakes made, and he made a horrible mistake on the first drive of the game. No reason to throw that ball even in bounds, much less, probably, 20 yards short of if it was a go route. I never did get to see the replay of that play to understand if it was an actual go right, but if it was 20 yards underthrown into double coverage. It was a terrible decision. And he rebounded a little bit, and, he got both touchdown passes were great plays by Carr. One, he did have pressure right in his face, the one to Foster, and the throw to Shaheed was a great throw, but there was no sustained drives. There was no protection for him. We couldn't run the ball. It was about as anemic an offensive performance as you could put out there. And then the defense early on didn't really back them up. But they hung in long enough to give the offense a chance to get it together. They just never did. And we end up losing by double digits. So I think a fair outcome to the game for sure. Probably should have been a higher score. The Kalen Saunders play being the one that probably kept that from a 30 plus to 13 game. So pretty disappointing. And then you throw in Groupie missing an extra point on top of it right after you get a little momentum change. For the only time in the game we had a little momentum, he misses the extra point. It's deflating. No good performances on offense, really. Olave was a non-factor, 20 yards, I think. The Chiefs did get their normal benefit of the flags, I felt. The Olave getting hit on that one route way early was definitely PI. We didn't get the call. The Granderson defensive holding was a bizarre call. The PI was definitely a PI on a Debo, but again, it's a light PI compared to what happened to us, and we don't get the call. So
yeah,
it's different for both teams in the way it was called. I don't have a problem with that being called on a Debo, but you've got to call the one on the Chiefs. It was far worse than the one on Debo. So, but that didn't influence the game. Let's be honest. It's just, it was pretty much about as bad as you could get. And with Carr going down, which I think for 3 to 4 weeks here at least is kind of what I've read back and forth. Maybe y'all have heard something more updated than that. We get to see, an inexperienced quarterback coming in with this line. I mean, hold on. This is going to get really freaking ugly fast. Yeah. So Corey, or Matt, who wants to go next? Max, you want to play off what I said, or Corey want to take it?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go after this. I think the biggest thing is in the first 5 weeks of the season, we have seen the full range of Derek Carr. Weeks 1 and 2, we saw what Carr looks like with protection, when the team is relatively healthy. And at that point, he's a very effective quarterback. The team scores 40-plus points 2 weeks in a row. And then you get to weeks 3, 4, 5. 3 and 4, it's like things were a little bit tougher, but we still moved the ball. Carr made some good plays in pressure situations. And then you get to week 5, and he started the game off as poorly as you could start it off with that throw. Like, that throw was atrocious. The second it left his hand, it looked like he was doing a fadeaway in a basketball game. Like I looked at the TV, I'm like, that's it. I know where this is going. The game is going downhill from here. And it was terrible, in that play. And then also the Jamal Williams play when he's returning the kick. That one stood out to me as well. And it's like, it's two plays. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? On both of the plays, like Carr, it's like, why are you throwing that? And then Jamal Williams, why did you take one step out of the end zone when you should fair catch that? Like, take the ball on the 30. Why the hell is he stepping out to the 1? Then he has to hesitate, and he's like, oh, shit, I have to go. And those two plays were the Saints in a nutshell. That's the 2024 Saints in a nutshell. A random, stupid decision every single game. Whether it's Shaheed fielding the punt last week inside the 10, Adebo with the pass interference, Jamal Williams with the kick return. It's like something, Carr with the bad pass. Something happens every single week where it's just like, what are we doing? And is it the players? Are they dumb, or is it the coaching? I don't know. It's the whole chicken and the egg thing. But it's I guess we can't really say which one is the catalyst for the other, but something's off. And they just keep making dumb decision after dumb decision. And, man, it's frustrating. The game itself, it went kind of like I thought it would. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that when you're down a few offensive linemen, that Chris Jones is going to feast. We saw a prelude to this game with Jalen Carter a few weeks ago. McCoy goes out, all of a sudden Carter is living in the backfield. So we all knew what was going to happen. And I'll be honest with you, man. I know the first 2 weeks were, at this point, we can say they were an aberration because we were healthy. Now, this team, the last 3 weeks, has looked exactly like I thought they would when I predicted them to go 7-10. I thought we would be in every game. I thought the defense would keep us in every game, and they have. Even this game, the score, I mean, to Nick's point, it probably should have been a lot worse than it was. But at the same point, we were still in the game. We got within one score of them, and then Groupie misses the extra point. But that's what I thought this team would be. I figured the defense would be good enough to keep us in every game, and it would just be a matter of what would happen with the offense. And we said it in the season preview episode. Like I harped on it. I said, this team, this is basically on offense with regards to their depth. This is a house of cards. And all it was going to take was one or two key injuries to knock this entire house of cards over. And if you would have told me before the season, if you would have asked me which offensive lineman can we least afford to lose, I would have said McCoy. And sure as shit, in week 3, McCoy goes out, and then Ruiz goes out. So those are your two, your two most experienced offensive linemen, and probably your two best offensive linemen. No disrespect to Fuaga, but he's still a rookie. And it's like those two go out, you're screwed. Look at this game. They ended up shuffling in the middle of the game. We shifted. They pulled Saldiveri, I think, in the third or fourth quarter, because I guess he wasn't performing well enough. So they pulled him out. They slid Patrick over to left guard, and then they moved Kyle Hergel into center, I think it was. Or either maybe McGovern, one of the two, or maybe both of them. And it's like, that's a recipe for disaster. We talked about it over and over again in the season preview. Wide receiver, no depth. We have two decent wide receivers, one good one and one decent one in Shaheed. Running back, we have one running back. Like, there's nothing after Kamara. Tight end, we don't have a good tight end. Like, Foster's a rock solid number 3. I guess he's a good number 2. He's a good
serviceable,
yeah. He's a serviceable number 2, but ideally that dude's your 3. Like, Juwan Johnson is stealing money at this point. He needs to be one of the first cuts once the offseason gets you.
Yeah,
like Foster, he needs to be gone.
Foster gets extra points too with the Jesuit.
Yeah, exactly. But he also makes he's made plays this year.
Yeah.
But my point is, like, the offensive depth is non-existent. And I know everybody's I don't even want to look on Twitter right now, just what it takes with Carr being probably out for the next couple of weeks. We're going to most likely see one of the two quarterbacks. And you got either a second-year, fourth-round pick or a first-year, fifth-round pick. And the reality is, behind this offensive line, with this lack of weapons, it ain't going to be good for either of them.
No.
And it's like, I was on record saying I am all about these two quarterbacks getting a fair competition with Carr in 2025. I did not want to see either of them. Neither one of them were ready for Carr to be benched and for them to step in. Obviously, things change when there's an injury at play, so one of them has to come in. So, look, I hope to be wrong about this, but I really don't see these guys having much success over the next 2 weeks. You got the Bucs, who have Vita Vea in the middle. We probably won't be able to run the ball, given the state of our offensive line. They're going to have to pass. The following week, you got the Broncos. The Broncos' defense is nasty. And Peyton is going to have those dudes fired up to come in here and wreck shit. So
yeah,
I'm not optimistic over the next 2 weeks, and I'm speculating, obviously, thinking that Carr is going to be out for those two games. But, dude, it's going to be interesting, man. It really is.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we probably want to get into that stuff later too. Just, the whole debate on who's it going to be. Is it going to be Rattler or Haener? But, I did kind of dive into the Twitter goings on with the game last night. But, obviously, like, during the game, watching it, you're just pissed off because you felt like we could have done better, especially given the first 2 weeks of this year. There's a moment in the game, it's hard to explain, where, like, you're watching it and, like, your rational brain can tell you that our offensive line is MASH unit isn't a good enough description. Our offensive line is beyond a MASH unit. And, so regardless of what your rational brain is telling you, you're just thinking, we should just be doing better. We should just be dialing it up. We should be more creative. We should figure this shit out. But I think a little bit after the game happened, my big picture is that, look, I mean, the Chiefs are the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs for a reason. You played them on Monday night in Arrowhead. It's Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid scheming up against Dennis Allen. And even beyond that, though, the reason and the ways that they've won their last 2 Super Bowls have largely been because of their defense. Okay, so you take a step back and you're just saying, like, look, this is a really good defense we played. And we had, to say we were even like 80% would be generous. We were closer to like 60%, given, yes, the offensive line injuries, but also given the fact that we brought in an offensive coordinator who starts this offense first with the run, right? And we couldn't run the ball. We didn't have the guys to properly block this defense in order to run the football. We have an offense that operates under run, opening up the pass. To your point earlier, Nick, with play action, it is a motion based, or at least a lot of motion involved with this offense, trying to get the defense to think that from one particular personnel group, you could be running, 10 different plays. But if the thing that causes a defense to have to go through that calculation pre-snap is not there, aka the ability to run it, then all of a sudden you're hamstrung. This isn't an excuse necessarily to Kubiak, but we were significantly hamstrung in just being able to operate the way we wanted to operate. I go back to week 2 when we were just lauding the performance against Dallas, and then we had the performance against Carolina before that. And we were just saying how amazing and awesome it was to see this offense with this new coordinator, with kind of with by and large the same guys, just literally being able to do whatever they wanted. The whole playbook was at Kubiak's disposal in those first 2 weeks because he had all of his men. And even that offensive line, the guys who we brought in week 1 before they got injured would have had significant trouble, or at least a really tough game against Chris Jones and the Kansas City defense. That's just a fact. So then
it wouldn't have looked like that, though. No way. I mean, that was insane.
No. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it wouldn't have looked anywhere like. But that's what I'm saying. So we would have had a tough game, even with the best guys on the Saints, and we didn't even have half of that. So kind of taking stock of the whole thing, I'm like, look, we had an uphill battle to begin with. Now, that said, it doesn't excuse, the things that we saw. The offensive line had too much to overcome. It was enough shit that I had to write half of this shit down. Because our margin, when you're like that, your margin for error is so small, right? So Carr right off the bat, like you said, Nick, Carr's interception, you can't do that, right? You're already operating on a razor thin margin. Like Max said, you had a house of cards to begin with. We talked about it in our season preview. We said, God forbid Eric McCoy gets injured this year. And that's just one guy, right? We weren't even talking about Cesar Ruiz or Lucas Patrick, who we didn't even know a whole lot about. You got to assume he's playing hurt when he's playing. He comes out of the game at one point. So you got to assume he's not 100%. So Carr throwing that interception, especially when he threw it, the way he threw it, you can't have that. We said before this game, we need clean football. That wasn't clean football. And then, we also talked about last week that the way the first 4 weeks went and the way the 2 losses went, we actually, I don't want to say we were duped, but we thought, hey guys, this is on the players. These losses have been on the players not executing. Shaheed trying to field the ball within the 5, Carr not throwing the ball in the dirt on the screenplay. It's a fluke pick 6, but it's still a pick. Debo with the PI. It all pointed to the players. Well, this was one where I will gladly take it back, where the coaches had just as much to do with this one as any kind of player's mistakes. I think DA got out coached by Reed. A lot of people get out coached by Andy Reid. That's not particularly the issue. It's just that, again, you knew you had a really small margin to work with. You're trying to be aggressive at the end of the first half. I get the idea of being aggressive, but there were multiple different ways, to peel that onion. And it's like, if you're going to do that, if you're Kubiak, then on the flip side, all right, your coach just puts you in a position where you've got more time. Well, if you don't get a first down, just one, you're giving the ball right back to Patrick Mahomes. So you throw it deep on the first play, clock stops. You can't. The second play, I think, incomplete pass. Either way, you go 3 and out, they get the ball back. When you know they're getting the ball back in the second half, which goes back to the other thing about coaching, you won the toss and didn't defer. It's like, we joked about it saying it's Madden rules, but it's also just rules. It's football. It's just, you're going to need every possession you can get, especially in the second half against this team, and you just throw it away. And then as far as coaching from a big picture, we always said before we go into the whole fire DA midseason train or track or whatever, we're like, yeah, but the strength of this team has been the defense and all that stuff. Well, I mean, yeah, we held them to 26 points, but in 3 out of 7 in the red zone, but almost 500 yards of offense for them. And if they didn't make their own mistakes in the red zone, it could have easily been in the 40s. So your defense flubbed up. I think DA had a good back and forth on Twitter today with Ross Jackson, talking about the man versus zone coverage, where DA ran, I think, the lowest percentage of man in a DA defense so far, at least with this personnel grouping. You don't know the exact year, was like 23% man to zone coverage. It was only like a 20. Sense. Right. That was the craziest or the lowest amount of man coverage before Monday night. He was like 21% man to zone last night. I think he was almost trying to get too cute with anticipating what the Chiefs might run.
That's scared of Mahomes. That's all that is. He was scared. He changed everything he normally does, and you were against inferior wide receivers. You have to account for Kelsey. Why not lock up those receivers man to man? It makes no sense. It was clearly just fear of the opponent. And if you've watched him this year, you shouldn't have that fear this year. Of course, you respect Pat, but you can't fear the opponent.
But yeah, no, it was definitely DA being like, I don't know, overthinking it. Yeah. And getting screwed by overthinking it. And so there's that. I mean, and you go back to Carr. It's like it was just too up and down from him. He couldn't settle in the beginning. We needed a fast start. He missed guys point blank. And yes, he did have some better reps, but it's just like the O-line was so bad in front of him that even when they actually protected him, he just, that internal clock in his head was like, I got to get rid of it. And, so
obviously it was funny in the second half that he threw it in the dirt twice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why didn't you do that on the first drive?
Yeah.
Like, you're an 11-year veteran at this point. Why would you chuck it up inbounds on the first drive when you're moving the ball? Like, getting points on that drive was crucial, and he just chucks it up. And it's like she just watched it, and just infuriating, man.
I rewatched that first play there, and I saw somebody shared a wide angle of that one. If he'd have chucked it in the dirt on that first play, it would have been grounding.
That's fine. That's better than an interception.
Better than an interception, true. But also, he had, like, Shaheed was the most covered guy he could have chucked it up to. Like, Olave was sitting there in the curl zone with nobody on him. If he threw it anywhere in the vicinity of him, I don't even want him to try to get a completion out of it, but he had other places where he could have kind of just tossed it and it would have been a legal pass. Shaheed was probably the hardest option to do what he said he was. I believe him when he said, I was just trying to like legally get the ball thrown away. I believe that's what he was trying to do, but I sensed that he panicked in that one. Wasn't the only play he panicked on. And
it rattled him big time. There's no doubt.
There was a lot of panic in Carr last night, and it showed. And we saw
it's fine though, because he admitted that it was a bad mistake, which is fine. Yeah. And we can bury it there. It's just a horrible decision.
Yeah.
A horrible pass. It was an interception. Inexcusable. Closed book. Like, there's no reason to even dive into it.
And it's still not the worst interception we saw.
Let's also give him his flowers for, like, that fourth down pass. Tipton should have caught that shit. But first of all, why is he throwing it to Tipton? Where in the hell is Olave at this point?
Well, okay, that's a really difficult catch on Tipton's part. Did it hit him in the hands? Dude, that ball came straight over his head. That was like Willie Mays shit if he's going to catch that punt. That's not...
Sorry, it was an all-out blitz. He had to throw the ball up, and he put it exactly where the guy could catch it.
That wasn't a...
It's not a gimme, but the guy...
That wasn't a should-have-caught-it catch.
He should have caught it.
But, Corey, are we the only team in the league that never gets those catches? Doesn't it seem that way?
Yeah, I watched Terry McLaurin make that catch like a week ago.
You're talking about Terry McLaurin versus an undrafted free agent wide receiver.
I think that's
exactly. Why are they throwing it to him? in that situation.
That's a better question because Carr said he was the number one option in his press conference. He said
I have an issue with that. Why is he the number one?
Why
option?
Is he number one?
That exposes our lack of depth at wide receiver even more. For the fact that they're taking an undrafted free agent and making this guy the primary option in a must-win game on fourth down. What in the hell? Why does Olave have 10 yards in the game?
And I take even more issue with the idea that, look, they've said that Kubiak's offense takes a lot off of Carr's plate, which is all well and good. But, you still got to be able to audible if you're a QB. It was these guys' jobs. I don't want to even do the math on how many dollars Carr gets paid per hour to watch film, but I've watched enough Chiefs football to know that Spags loves a good zero blitz. He loves to just bring the house on a third down. It was a fourth down, and they're like, you got to expect that like the cover zero blitz is coming, and you don't check out of it because there wasn't even a quick slant.
But what was it? It was fourth and what?
Fourth and
12 or 13.
No, it wasn't even that long. It was enough to where I
feel like it was. It wasn't a short one. It wasn't like it was fourth and 2.
They brought enough guys to where if a receiver caught a slant at 5 yards, he's getting the first down. It was that wide open. You go back and rewatch. It's fine, but there was
You're
no
giving a lot of credit to our receivers.
Well, you said Tipton should have caught it, but I mean,
it hit him in the hands, and it would have been a tough catch. But yes, he should have caught that. It's fourth down. You have to make that catch.
There wasn't even a check down. There wasn't even an audible. That was your hot. Basically, he's saying there wasn't a hot route because I threw it to
terrible play call. Terrible play call. Also, if you want to win games in the league, you've got to catch some of those because these games are fine. You have to catch them if you're going to win the game. If we're just always going to say it wasn't a perfect throw, of course. But we seem to not make those plays. And that's not just Tipton. It's just, Shaheed, the one in the end zone. Was it a perfect throw? No, it was a good throw. You got to make some of those plays. Of course you don't make them all. They are difficult. I agree with Corey. That's a difficult catch. But it's one, if you want to win that game, you got to catch it. It's just what it is.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. It's like no play in the NFL is easy. You know what I mean? It's even a simple flare out, you see players drop that every once in a while.
You're right.
Nothing is easy. Now, when you're in a fourth quarter situation with 3 or 4 minutes left, whatever it was, obviously a pressure-packed situation, Carr with an all-out blitz actually put the ball in a catchable place for the wide receiver. Now, we are all in agreement that Tipton should not have been the wide receiver that was in the number one option on that play. We're all in agreement on that. But to Nick's point, that is a tough play that if you want to win in this league in pressure-packed situations, these guys need to make it. It's like, who was it? David Tyree in the Super Bowl when the Giants beat the Patriots and he caught that shit off his helmet? That's a way harder catch, and he made it. These catches are made in history. There's multiple instances of it.
We can't compare the most improbable catch
ever
in NFL history.
I'm not comparing it and saying that he, would make that catch, but the reality is you have to make these tough catches. It hit both of his hands. Yes, it was a Willie Mays style running out a fly ball, whatever. But you have to make these catches in the NFL in that situation if you want to win. That's the difference between going 7-10 and going 10-7. Making plays like that. We watched Terry McLaurin. I referenced it earlier. He made it a couple weeks ago on that insane pass that Jaden Daniels made. In I think it was a third down situation. It might have been fourth down actually. Nick, do you remember?
I think it was third.
I think it was third, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Insane catch, though. Insane catch. And those I'm not comparing him to Terry McLaurin, but these are the plays the team has to make. And yes, I would rather see that funnel to Olave than Mason Tipton. Or even Shaheed, which I would bet my life Shaheed would drop that.
I think...
The thing is... Hold on, chill out. The thing is, these plays need to be made if we're going to win these games. Because we have been in situations the last couple of weeks where 1 or 2 plays have made the game. And we have missed on every single opportunity we've had. Whether it's Howden running into the other defensive backs, freeing up Goddard, whether it's Adebo doing a pass interference on a third down, or this week with the ball hitting Tipton in the hands. And that's a play that keeps the drive alive. We have to make some of these plays, and we're making none of them.
Yeah, I think we've spent way too much time talking about the quote play that hit Tipton in the hands. The amount that fucking play had to do with us having a chance to win is so much smaller than so many other plays in this game. All right,
Agreed.
yeah. I mean, like an NFL receiver, the ball hits him in the hands, in theory, should catch it. But like that, we're done talking about that. Like, so much happened before that. You know, even if he catches that, the drive is alive to what? Like, score and kick an onside kick? I mean, like,
no, there was about there was 4 minutes left at that point because Haener got in the game with 2 and some change, so they had a drive in between.
The game was decided on, you know,
the game was decided when Carr threw the interception in the first quarter. Carr
threw the interception. Before that, when he had a wide open Tipton and he had time to throw, he stepped into it and just flat missed him. I mean, Tipton there was no defender in front of him.
Yeah,
Tipton broke open. He just flat out missed him. And it wasn't the only pass he missed. You know, on the touchdown drives.
Carr was terrible for the most part.
Yeah, on the touchdown drives, he settled in and did what he had to do. And then, but that's not even, you know, then we even, like, besides all those offensive woes, Carr, receivers, the offensive line, which is the star not underperformer, they were just like, what are you going to do? But the defense was terrible. I mean, they couldn't stop the run, you know, and this was one where usually, you know, I think Nick says it a lot. I'm not saying this isn't me saying, oh, Nick says it a lot, so he's wrong. But Nick, you're often one of the first to point out that you can't expect the defense to defend when they're on the field the entire game.
Yeah.
And that's generally true. And I generally agree with that. They had a 40-minute time of possession to 20. But this one, it just so happened that those two things happened at the same time and had nothing to do with each other because we were getting gashed from jump. You know, that first drive that KC had, when they wanted to run, they ran. When they wanted to throw short, they threw short. When they wanted to throw intermediate, they threw intermediate. KC, the Chiefs were playing with their food with us. And it was like, it was demoralizing as shit to watch because, you know, yes, bend but don't break defense, sure, but like it, we didn't really have any answers for them.
I want to cut the defense a little bit of slack because Pete Werner was out, and Pete Werner is the one who's probably going to be tasked with covering Kelsey.
Yeah, 100%.
So when he's out and you're plugging in Orgy and DeMarco Jackson, that's not good, bro. Those guys are the end of the bench. Well, but you have to take that into account with this because they thought Werner was going to play until Friday, and all of a sudden he wasn't going to play. So
that's fair. That's fair. But the guys
I didn't
are
mean to cut you off, Nick. I know you got more thoughts on that.
Yeah.
No, what I was going to say on the time of possession thing is I don't think this game was that until when we got to the fourth quarter and I texted y'all the disparity. I'm like, they're done. There's no way they're going to finish this game strong at that point.
Yeah.
That didn't affect the first three quarters where they were also getting run off the field pretty well. They weren't struggling. I don't think they ran it as well as Corey's insinuating, but we didn't stop it either. I think they averaged
91
about
yards I want to say they were at like close to 91 in the first half. But anyway.
In the 91, how much of that was Mahomes of that 91 in the first half?
Yeah, he did have 2 scrambles.
We didn't give up a 10-yard run. Mahomes had a couple scrambles that I think was a part of that 91 that really, look, we were worried about that. One of y'all brought it up. I didn't bring it up, but y'all were worried about that going into the game, is that we're going to see him do some of that. And he kept, I think he had 2 third down scrambles for first downs. But either way, I mean, they were able to do it enough where we had to respect it. And I mean, they passed it all over us. And again, back to the coaching that, you know, Corey was talking about, I think you have to have issue with both sides of the ball. DA's game plan made no sense to me. Why are you going away from man against the least talented skill group we faced all year? All of a sudden, we're going to go zone in that situation. And you had clearly no plan with Werner out to deal with Kelsey. That's a fail on the defensive game plan. There's no way to slice it, other way to slice it. That's what it is. And the Clint game plan was terrible. It was a ton of deep routes. Those were our first option. What's the worst thing you can throw when you have nothing up front to deal with pressure coming up the middle? Deep routes. That's a mistake. So I blame the coaches on both fronts, on offense and defense, for this game. To me, that was the primary one for the first time this year where I felt the game plan was bad. Obviously, the players contributed. We talked about Carr, his whole first half getting rattled. Throws a terrible ball. That's not the end of the world to me. But then he came out the next drive, missed an easy Shaheed throw on the sideline. It affected him going into the other drives. And you got to forget it. It was awful, but you got to forget it and move on. And he didn't get over it until halftime. Like Max said, he came out in the second half. He started looking more comfortable and was hanging in there a lot better. But it took a whole half for him to get there. That's not acceptable. It's gotta be immediate. You've got to put that behind you and move on. But he was clearly missing throws he hasn't missed all year in that first half. Poor game by him. Couldn't run it. Obviously, the offensive line, we can't say enough. That group of players they can't do anything. It is what it is. And if it's going to be this setup for the next few weeks, rookie quarterback, I think we're in serious trouble.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when Penning, aside from Fuaga right now, Penning is the person I'm least concerned with on the offensive line, which, man, if you would have told me this in August, I would have been like, nah, you're crazy. But
That was my hot take.
Penning's
One of them.
been fine.
It was.
Yeah, look, he hasn't been good. He's been fine.
That
But
was literally
relative to the
We all would have taken
turnstiles,
that. To be fair, we all would have taken fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we got to
yeah.
be happy with that.
but relative to the turnstiles that are in between him and Fuaga, Penning looks like a goddamn Pro Bowler.
Yeah. It goes back to what you said, Max. And, I hate to say this about stuff that you say, but this point is evergreen, is that we were paper thin. It's just there was one line of defense on the O-line, and the second there's a kink in that armor, the whole enemy gets in, and it really doesn't even matter who you're playing, because the NFL is good enough to where, like, yeah, they had Chris Jones, and they have, I can't name their other guys. Maybe you can, but they're not playing in sync. I mean, even when Lucas Patrick, who does great at left guard, great considering the position he was put in, there was a play where he's just sitting there shuffling, looking around with his head, and Nick Bolton's just zooming right by him. Like he didn't even see him. And it just, and I hate for it to be comical, but it's kind of like, that's where we are with this offensive line, because even one of the guys, that would have happened even if Ruiz was in on the other side, if Patrick was in at center, so it's like the depth is our killer, or the lack of depth is our killer with this offense.
And that's drafting. That's missing on all these picks.
Goes back to Mickey. Fuck yeah.
Let's pivot. So I think we talked enough about this game. Let's move on to our thoughts with Carr most likely being out a couple of games at least.
Yeah.
Like, Corey, what are who should be the starting quarterback if it's not Carr, in your opinion, this week against Tampa? Because you got 2 games back-to-back in basically a span of today's Tuesday, so in a span of 8 or 9 days, you got 2 games. So if you are DA and Kubiak, who are you starting on Sunday against Tampa Bay? And just, I guess, tell us why and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, sorry, I was distracted because this time we actually did lose Nick. There he is. Okay, he's back. Nick, Max was just asking who I think should start. Was it just a should, or who would I think will start?
No, it's what you would do. If you were DA / Kubiak, who would you start? And then give us, I guess, your assessment on how do you think it's going to go.
Okay, yeah.
With who you really think is going to start at that point.
This is just my gut. It has nothing to do with all the hysteria and all the bullshit going back and forth. I'm putting in Rattler, and that's a football take. That's not a prove any kind of point take. It's 2 weeks for sure, maybe 3. Given Carr, his history could be 1. The way he is.
He might play. He's tough as shit.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's going to be screaming some Jesus verses at the doctors to get him in, showing this tattoo and shit. But probably won't do that. That'd be kind of weird. But no, but I'm putting in Rattler because he offers you the most upside. And you could say that Haener had a whole extra year with this. Well, not even with this offense. He's had an extra year with the team. So between Haener and Rattler, they've had the same amount of time with Clint Kubiak. And if you look at the physical tools, yes, like Rattler is built bigger than Haener. Haener looks like Macaulay Culkin out there playing in the NFL. It looks like a Disney movie.
Bro. They're like within 8 pounds of each other.
No, I know. Like maybe like the height and weight doesn't show much of a difference, but you just like you look at him and like, look, this is no slight on, like, Haener's worked his tail off. He could probably kick anybody's ass up and down the block, at least in the podcast Twitter world. But it's like Rattler just seems to bigger size. But anyway, that's not the point. The way that Rattler throws the ball just looks so much more effortless, and Haener's got a strong arm too. I think they're both equally about as mobile. If anything, Haener might be a little bit more mobile than Rattler. In my opinion, I think he's got a little more burst and acceleration. But I just think watching the two of them play, Rattler has exuded a little bit more confidence to me when I've seen him, whether we're watching camp highlights or preseason, and that's all we have to go by. Like whether or not that even matters when you're going up against the ones from a Todd Bowles defense or the ones from Broncos defense, especially in Sean Payton's homecoming game, Breeze Ring of Honor, ton of pressure is going to be on that guy taking the snaps. But I want to see Haener give it a shake. And then as far as what I think,
wait, you want to see Haener or you want to see Rattler?
No, I want to see Rattler. I want to see them put Rattler out there. But as far as what they're probably going to do,
that was the ultimate swerve there.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past myself to do something like that. But no, I want to see Rattler out there. And I don't know how many times I've said that now, but in terms of what they would do, how I think it's going to shake out, I honestly have no faith that it's going to be anything besides Jake Haener rolling out there. I mean, I don't know how the mind of a head coach and offensive coordinator and all those decisions that go into who's number 2 and who's number 3, or do we put an or on the depth chart because we're scared of the kids on Twitter? Like, I don't think that's the reason that, like they had Haener as the backup and they had Rattler as the emergency. Something went into that decision, right? And the biggest question everybody has, you've got one side saying, well, it's simple. It's football. Haener's got more experience. We're making him number 2. The other side saying you've got some kind of internal struggle happening on Airline Drive where you've got a faction of guys that came in with Clint Kubiak that love what they see out of Rattler. And then you got your guys like Loomis who drafted Haener and Dennis Allen who wanted Haener and Carr who wants Haener because Haener's got less of a chance of taking Carr's job if he does well. It's like you've got these the conspiracy theories and then you got the football takes. If it's pure football, I think Rattler should be the backup. But then again, why was Haener number 2 versus Rattler being the emergency? The way it's shaken out, they've seen something in Haener, in my opinion, to where he would be number 2. So unless I'm proven differently, I think Haener's going to be the one to roll out as the starter, which I disagree with.
Okay. Nick, what are your thoughts? Same question. Same scenario. Like, what would you do if you were PA/Kubiak?
I do think it's going to be Haener. Will do? I think, Max knows very well my thoughts on Haener, and I don't think he's a very good player. I don't think he's.
There he is. Boom.
Yeah. I interrupted, but it's got it. I was saying Max knows my thoughts on Haener, and I don't think Haener is a long-term pro. I just don't. I don't see anything there. I tend to agree with Corey. I think that's who's going to roll out there. I think when you ask what I would do, I think it would be, what are my intentions? If it's just to try and hold on to the season, thinking we're going to get Carr back, I'll probably just take a shot with Rattler because maybe he can make 2 or 3 throws that I don't think he's going to play well, but maybe he can make 2 or 3 throws that could change a game where my personal opinion of Haener is very low. I think the other thing that they're going to consider, and I would consider, is where do I see the future? And for me, putting in Rattler here could be a detriment to his future. So if I really see something there, am I going to put him behind 3 guys who clearly can't play right now? I don't know. I think I would probably, if I really think I see something in him, I would sit him out and let Haener play, let him take a little bit of the abuse and try and save Rattler. So what I'm saying is Rattler, I think if you think he's really your future, then maybe you consider not risking this here in this situation. If it was a healthy line, put in the best guy, no doubt. And I don't. For me, it's definitive that Rattler has more upside than Haener. I don't think it's close. That's partially for my really poor opinion of Haener, but I don't think there's a debate in there.
I don't think you're wrong on that either.
You're right.
I tend to agree with Corey. I think they're probably going to stick with Haener for a game. If it's really bad, maybe we see Rattler. But I feel like if you're making a franchise decision and you think Rattler has a future, throw Haener out there and see how bad it is, and just buy some time. And I don't want his confidence getting crushed by just a terrible situation, and that's what we have right now on offense. It's just a beaten up offensive line. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah,
I think Haener starts.
I got one thing before you chime in, Max. What I would hate to see, I could totally see it happening. We roll out Haener as a starter, which is not what the crowd wants. We're back in the dome. Haener obviously doesn't perform well because of the reasons we think he won't perform well. And the whole dome starts chanting, "We want Rattler. We want Rattler." And then DA, just to say he's not the coach doing what the fans want him to do, has even more reason not to play Rattler. Anyway, I just want to say that. Go ahead, Max.
What if Taysom's healthy? Would you start him, Max, for one game against the Bucs for the whole season on the line? Would you start Taysom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
1,000%. I would start Taysom. No, if Taysom's healthy, I start him. No question. Nothing against the other two, but if it's a 1 or 2 game situation, Taysom's my starter.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
And if you're running for your life, Taysom's your best option. So
exactly.
That's what I would do.
And look, we need to put to rest the Saints are not watching, they're not monitoring Twitter. They're not making decisions off of what us idiots on Twitter are tweeting.
Correct.
We're all fucking morons for the most part. Like this whole demographic that's on Twitter, Saints Twitter, 90% of them are fucking idiots. And the reality is, it's like the Saints are not monitoring what we are saying. They're not like paying any fucking attention to it at all and making any decisions based off of what we say. And it's like this whole conspiracy theory that, DA, we know the Saints drafted Rattler this year, but they actually secretly don't want him to play because this might make Carr feel. This whole thing is fucking stupid. Like DA's gonna.
I don't
DA
believe
is
you.
DA is in full on save his job mode. And this is why I think we saw a little more aggression out of him on Monday with some of the play calls, like going forward on 4th down and some of these other things he did. He knows he needs to save his job. And the reality is, if he looks over and sees that Rattler gives him the best chance to save his job,
he's in the game.
He's going to play him.
Yes.
He's going to play him.
Yep.
There is no fucking world where DA is like, I'm not going to play him because these morons on Twitter don't want him to play. That's not – no way, no how. If he's the ticket to saving his job, he's going to be on the field.
I agree.
Now, that being said, if it's a 1 or 2 game situation that Carr's out, and obviously none of us know the prognosis, the official prognosis and what it looks like. If it's 1 or 2 games and Taysom's healthy, he plays for me. Like, that's what I would do.
Me too.
Yeah.
I
don't know, Max.
If Taysom's not healthy and it's 1 or 2 games, I'm playing Haener. And here's why. To Nick's point, we all know Rattler has all the talent in the world. Like, he has the talent to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL on pure talent. I don't want to throw him out there behind this patchwork offensive line with this lack of wide receivers and lack of tight ends and lack of running backs surrounding him. I don't want to ruin him. I want Rattler, by all means, I want him sitting on the bench, soaking it all in, learning how to be a pro, just going through everything this year and just picking it up to where in 2025, he is ready to come in and compete for the starting quarterback job. This year, I don't want to see him. If it's 2 or 3 games, put in Haener. I feel like Haener unlike Nick, I feel like Haener does have a future as a perennial backup. Like, you're going to see this dude in the league for like 12 years. I don't want to say Chase Daniel because I don't know if he'll earn the $40 million or whatever that Chase Daniel has. But I feel like you're going to see Haener as a primary backup who starts like 1 or 2 games a year, for the next 10 to 12 years. And I would like to see him for a 2 or 3 game stretch, put him in. Do not risk Rattler behind this offensive line. This line will get him killed. This line is awful. And it's, obviously it's mainly due to injury, but man, don't put him out there if he has a real chance to be good. Like, this isn't a situation where Brock Purdy came in and he was flooded with weapons, his rookie year at the end of the year. He comes in and he's got Deebo Samuel, he's got Ayuk, he's got George Kittle, he's got Christian McCaffrey. This is not that situation. So do not put Rattler in this year. Go ahead, put Haener in for a couple of games. Let Carr come back, take all the injections he needs to play the game, and just do this season like that. 2025, by all means, position Rattler to take the job. Give him a chance. Put it up. Open competition between the three.
Yeah, I think, what you're saying, Max, is 100% rational, except for the fact that you think DA doesn't look at Twitter. We've had some crazy burner accounts following us recently. I think he's all over it. Okay, he's going to play who we think. Anyway, I'm done with that one. But no.
The sad thing is there is a wide contention of people on Saints Twitter who believe this. They think that the Saints are monitoring their accounts about everything, and it's stupid.
Well, when Carr had one of his first press conferences this year where he took accountability for something and people were like, see, bullying works. I'm like, that Derek Carr did not admit to something he did wrong because XYZ on Twitter said he never does that. I don't know. But that's not even where I was going. It's an interesting point you raised, Max, because, rationally, you would do exactly what you're saying. Like, if you got a guy who's really good, why put him in the line of fire? But the thing is, if you also think the guy's that good and he's also your most talented QB, aka gives you the best chance to win, and if you're DA and you're thinking, if I don't win these next two games at however many after that, I could be gone. Maybe that's a risk you're taking. Maybe that's maybe you're willing to risk the welfare of the young kid to help save your ass.
Absolutely. And my counterpoint is, we're going to find out what DA thinks of Rattler, because if DA says, you know what, we're going to start him next week, that will tell you everything you need to know. That will tell you that DA says, you know what, this guy gives us the best chance to win, i.e. the best chance for me to save my job and be here for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
He's not gonna blackball Rattler and not play him if Rattler gives him the best chance.
Or it either says a lot about what DA thinks, or it'll say a lot about something you've touched on before with the head coach coordinator relationship. Where before the season, we were saying we want a coordinator to come in and basically be the offensive version of Greg Williams. Just run his offense, DA stay the hell out the way. It'll test what the relationship is between Greg Williams, between Dennis Allen and Clint Kubiak. Because it's a quarterback who is the offensive coordinator's primary player, right? Clint Kubiak's offense begins and ends with the guy under center. And so if Clint Kubiak decides Rattler is the guy I need to run my offense since my number one can't do it, and he goes to DA and says that, we'll never really know what their conversations are. But it'll be up to DA, technically, as the buck stops with him type of guy, to say, all right, I feel comfortable with whatever you've decided. I'm the head coach, but you're the offensive guy, so roll with your offensive player. Is DA going to have some kind of other ideas and say, no, Clint, I know that's what you want, but I'm the head coach. I'm overruling you. I have this other idea. We'll never know what those conversations are. Okay, but
we won't. But
this will test that, right? The
actions will tell us, because these guys are going to hitch their wagon to the guy who gives them the best chance to keep their job.
Agree, 100%.
And the reality is, there's a reason that Haener is the number 2 for the past 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, and it could only be
tells me that they think that Haener operates the offense a little bit better at this point in time, and he has 1 year of experience in the NFL, not in the system, in the NFL, learning how to be a pro. He's been through 2 training camps. So everything that they have shown us indicates that they feel that Haener is the guy over 2 or 3 games. So, and to your point about, quarterbacks sitting, when they're more talented, Pat Mahomes, infinitely more talented than Alex Smith, sat for an entire year. So the precedent is there, but when you have arguably, some people would call him the GOAT. He's not, but arguably he's a top 5 quarterback ever probably at this point. He sat for a year.
There's so many goats now, but I get the point.
But my point is he sat for a full season.
They're
and
eating
by
the
all
goats.
accounts was tearing up practice and outperforming Alex Smith. So he sat for a year. So what does that tell you?
Also
Coaches don't want to ruin him.
Also a different situation, but the point is made with that. You're right. Anyway, so yeah, we could probably go a whole other hour.
Why don't we recap the predictions real quick? What did we? I know Nick's got a roll. How did we square away? We know that Corey lost on the winner.
I was trying to get ahead of y'all on one. Didn't work. Max and Nick, y'all predicted KC. Max 21-20. Chiefs /refs. I don't think.
That came into play. That was accurate.
They wanted to go home at the end. That was clear. They had a bunch of missed calls, but
that came into play.
I don't think even with the regular refs, then we would have had the way we played wouldn't quite have worked. You had Olave at a very specific 111. One being the number you repeated 3 times would be the number of receptions he had on targets. Honey Badger INT, you and I both had Honey Badger on defense. I don't think we can give it to him.
No.
I think the guy who was the MVP, we talked about Colin Saunders. None of us had him, but you got to give it to him.
Yep.
Nobody on offense. Yeah, nobody.
No. I mean, hell, you could probably give – well, it was defensive play, but Colin Saunders carried the ball the furthest out of anybody in that game.
I'm Nick, down with giving him offense and defense.
I want him to be RB2. Tell me why Jamal Williams should get carries ahead of Colin Saunders.
Actually,
I will take any and all arguments. I will take any and all arguments.
Colin Saunders should be playing the Taysom Hill role while Taysom's hurt.
What? I don't see why not.
Let's roll.
I mean, Taysom runs 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, come on. Did you see him doing the backflips?
Yes. And
how have we never seen this? And these videos are surfacing 7 years into his career.
I saw those.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
When we signed him, they were all over the place. But yeah, I mean, look, Colin's hitting 15 miles an hour. Now, granted, he's probably sucking oxygen on the sideline a lot more than Taysom is. But look, get the man a little extra conditioning. He could take tailback reps easy. Anyway, Nick had Chiefs 20-17. Nick's offensive MVP pick was Carr, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Defensive was a Debo. You were really close, Nick. The refs gave him one. Your hot take was that he would have 0 penalties. That did not come to fruition.
Almost had.
You were close. You were close.
This one was simple. Nick and I get a point. You got 0.
I picked the Saints 2017. Olave as well. Honey Badger no. So
what are the season totals?
Oh, damn it. Nick's better at this.
I wrote it on there. You'll see it.
It's on there.
Oh, yeah. Behind me so y'all each get a point for this one. So Nick's in the lead with 6. I stay at 2. Max, you have
3.
Jumped up to 3. So
there we go.
Nick still has a commanding lead, but there's a lot of season left to be played. So there we are. Any closing thoughts?
Despicable game all around. Coaching, playing, everything was disgusting. Worst effort of the season by everybody in the organization. It was terrible. The coaching was bad. The playing was bad. Just more mind-blowing mistakes. The Jamal Williams kick return, the Derek Carr interception, and the sequence of play calling right before the end of the first half where we ran off, I think, 25 seconds, gave them the ball, and we all knew they were scoring once we did that, and then they got the ball back to start the second half. Also, add the receiving the ball after winning the coin toss. So those were my biggest issues with this game. Yeah. Just a comedy of poor decision-making and poor playing. Carr's worst game in probably since the Rams game last year.
In 10-plus games. Before that.
Yeah, before that. Like, this was Carr's worst game, one of his worst games as a Saint, maybe his worst.
Certainly his worst
because-
half as a Saint, in my opinion, or
Yeah.
up there with he had one
Yeah.
last year. I think we had 30 yards, but that half was a brutal half of football.
Yeah,
We played
the
scared.
game itself was brutal. You know, we were in our group text going back and forth. I mean, the second he threw that interception, I knew the game was over. I missed the Colin Saunders interception because I was watching Happy Gilmore. I switched
Feel
over
bad
to
for you,
catch the Chubbs Peterson scene.
Like one of the one
I
bright spots.
couldn't, and I switched back, and I'm like, oh, we have the ball. What happened? So it's awful game, not fun to watch, fucking terrible all around.
Yeah, I kind of wish it's weird, but I almost wish that this total team loss, this terrible effort, would have came against a team that probably won't be fighting for another Super Bowl this year. You know what I mean? Like because we still have that in the back of our head, in the deck of cards, to say like, okay, like we played like shit, but it was the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs with the top 10 defense and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And yes, they haven't played like themselves or haven't been themselves in the first 4 games, but they always get it together at some point. You know, there's still that built into this one, which kind of sucks because you're just like, no, we lost because we played like shit, not because of who we played against. And so that one's kind of still eating at me, but it was both. You know, at the end of the day, it's both. You played a really good team in a really tough environment in prime time, but you still shot the bed. And that's that. Yeah. So anyway.
All right, let's wrap it up.
I do have one more thought. I have a morbid curiosity about this weekend and the one after, and I'm strangely excited to see what happens. And
I think someone's going to die?
No.
A morbid curiosity.
Yeah, there's this part of me that, you know, is excited to see what one of these 2 quarterbacks can do, whichever one it is. I don't care which one it is, honestly.
Okay.
If one of them can come in and, you know, have some magic to them, I mean, that's the best case scenario ever. So
can they turn?
I will gladly be wrong about what I think is going to happen if it leads to one of these guys being the guy.
Can Carr
I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it.
I don't think you'll be wrong.
Yeah. I don't think I will either, but I would love to be wrong. I would love to have to eat shit on this one and say I was wrong. Whoever it is came in and was awesome. But I don't
promise to actually do it because they're still looking for that Florida State fan. But anyway. All right. Well, so with that and Max not actually eating shit, it was figurative. We will wrap this one. We'll come back to you with a preview pod of the Bucs game, even though we've previewed a lot of, you know, at least the quarterback side of it. But we're going to put this Chiefs game to bed. Hopefully we can move on from it. We'll see who the quarterback's going to be next time we're coming to. Might not know. But anyway, thanks again for listening to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. Catch you next time. Who dat?
What a comeback!